So I am officially hosting my very first Christmas this year, and although it is September, I do find a major pitfall people fall into is if you are planning to host any kind of holiday, it's usually not until a few weeks beforehand that we really start thinking about all of the little projects and updates we want to do around our home. So I have gone through this in my work as a designer enough times to know that it is now September and I'm hosting my family here in early December. So I made a list of all of the little updates I want to do around my home so that I could kind of just periodically work on them every single week prior to actually hosting my family over. So instead of actually fussing around to try and wash all the walls and do a deep scrub, I did feel that it was actually time to give my house an entire new coat of paint. Last summer, there was actually a really good deal on paint in my area. So I actually ended up buying all new wall paint for the interior and actual exterior of my house last summer. And I've done nothing with it. It's just been sitting in our basement for a year. So again, painting is just one of those jobs where, in my opinion, it's minimal effort for a huge impact. And a lot of the times we look at our house, we think of all of the big renovations we want to do, when in reality, if we just checked through every room and did all of the little, small, inexpensive updates we could do, it does have a collectively large impact in your home. So with that being said, last week when I was working in the living room, I went through, I painted all the walls, I painted the closets. I actually took down all my drapes so that I could paint around the windows. And in doing so, I was kind of left feeling like my window coverings, like my blinds and things, were quite dusty and dingy. And I also felt like while I'm going through, I really should just update some of these small things as well, because again, it can have a really big impact. So I actually took down all of my blinds in the space and I did replace them. I actually love the original blinds that I did install in the space. I just find having a light filtering shade is just a really nice way to soften the light coming into your home, but it does still add a little bit of privacy. So I will say though, these particular blinds collect so much dust. They're also almost impossible to clean because the bottom half of the blind is actually more of like a paper material. When thinking about changing out these blinds, I love to revert back to my Pinterest inspiration boards. And I do find that most of the homes I'm drawn to have more of a rattan shade or like a wood blind. So that's what I decided to go with. I went with a pretty inexpensive, just rattan roller shade. It is still light filtering, so it adds that level of warmth and glow in the space, but I think it's going to be a lot easier to keep clean. And then because I did take down the drapes when I was painting as well, I felt like I actually wanted to switch out my drapery hardware. Instead of the gold, a lot of my inspiration images had black hardware. So I did go to IKEA. I just got some simple, inexpensive black hardware to have on my windows instead. And then because I did go with more of a rattan shade, I still wanted something that I could close that would be quite light filtering and that I could almost see through the fabric. So just something a little bit more sheer for my window coverings. So I did opt with swapping out my drapes as well to just a very inexpensive, simple sheer drape from IKEA. So what I'm actually hoping to work on today is I am going to go through and just paint the doors in the living room. So I've got my entryway door. I'm just going to give a simple coat of white paint. And then the closet doors in our front entryway, I think I'm going to go through and paint that high gloss brown. You would have seen I've painted a different door in my home this same color. So my idea is that I'm going to go through and just paint all of the closet doors this dark brown color. And then I think because I do just want a simple white entryway door, I am just going to go with the brown paint and just go around the trim on the window itself. But I think this is almost going to give the illusion of more of a wood detail around the window itself, even though it is just brown paint. I think it's still going to give that similar impact, and I think it'll just tie in nicely with the rest of the brown paint in the space. And then the largest project that I'm hoping to get done today is I actually have a plan to hang some wall shelves behind me on this wall. Initially, I considered ripping down the wainscoting and then just putting shelving on this wall. But talking it over with my husband, we're just pretty proud of this wall. We like the color that it brings to the room, the detail that it brings to the room. I just really love to thrift. I love knickknacks. I love styling spaces. And I just feel like in my home, I've got nowhere to do that. So this is pretty much the only wall that I have that's going to allow any kind of shelving unit on it. So that's why I've selected this wall. I really hope it works out. Hanging shelves does sound like an easy process, but to be honest, you have to be so diligent about getting them into studs on the wall and making sure there's enough support for all of the shelves themselves, as well as anything you put on the shelves. So I'm hoping that it's an easy process, but I do just want to make sure that everything's really secure and that nothing's going to fall off the wall or take down the wainscoting itself. So because the paint I'm using is about a year old, it has been sitting, and technically you should give your paint like a really good stir. So I got a fun new gadget here. It just connects to your drill and then you can stir the can of paint really well. So that's what I did for all of the wall paint. Basically any paint I'm going to use moving forward, even if it's a few months old, I think it's just good practice to give it a very thorough stirring before you actually use it. So as you can see, I did not stick with that shade of brown paint in this area. I absolutely hated it on my front door, and I hated it even more on these closet doors. The minute I started using it, I just knew it was a huge mistake. So that's all right. We live and we learn. I was planning on using that paint throughout my house on other doorways and other closet doors. So I've learned my lesson. I'm not going to use it anymore in my home. I feel like this is something that can happen when you live in a fixer-upper, is there's lots of little ways you want to add charm and character, but sometimes you can take it a step too far where it's actually making your house feel dated again, and that's definitely not what I want. I want my home to feel updated and just have little pockets of charm and personality added throughout. So I definitely think just the nice neutral white paint on these items here looks so much better, and it just makes it look a lot more updated and put together. Now there was a fun DIY that I did manage to use the brown paint for, and it was actually adding kind of this checkered detail around my entryway mirror. Originally, this mirror was actually just kind of a blonde shade of wood all the way around on the frame. So what I did was I actually used painter's tape to create kind of this faux stained effect. And instead of using any stain, because the frame around the mirror is actually more of a vinyl, it's not a real wood, I did use that brown paint, and it truly does give the effect of a stained wood. So I do think this is a high impact way of using that brown paint, and it just looks a lot more sophisticated than it did when I had it on my closet doors and my entry door. So we finished hanging up the shelves yesterday, and all I really did was take all of my accessories out of my spare room and just kind of throw them up on the shelves, but I haven't actually gone through and styled them. And I'm not gonna lie, this is something that I really want to do on camera and kind of like show you guys my process. But to be totally honest, I have no process. Like, I kind of just look at what's there, I fluff around with it a little bit. Even after I feel like I've finished it, there's usually still like a 3 day process where when I'm walking past anything that I've styled, I go back through, I switch it around, I might find other things around my home and swap it out. But I am so excited. Like, when I woke up this morning and I walked into our living room, it's just so nice and refreshing when you actually kind of do a small update in your home. I feel like something my house was really missing was just having an area where I could display lots of objects. I feel like when I look on my Pinterest board and my inspiration images for my home, there's always lots of knickknacks and it feels a little bit cluttered, and there's just so much character that little accessories can add. And I just felt like that was a component I was missing out on in my home. So I don't know, I was filled with joy this morning when I woke up and walked into my living room. And to be honest, I just really love the brackets as well. So well done, IKEA. I feel like this is just such an easy DIY way of adding a lot of character to your home and just adding a fun and interesting way to display objects in your space as well.